So welcome back to Inspiration Education.
Hey, here we are, episode number 32, coming to you by COVID-19.
Yeah, we're all social distanced and we're in our homes. We have for you today a very, very special guest.
Yeah, she is. This is our beautiful and wonderful guidance counselor, and that's you wear lots of hats, but this is Kelly Weber. She's been teaching at Desert Christian for many years, and actually she taught at Desert before she was even married, but is wearing a lot of hats, from English teacher to currently public speaking teacher as well. But Kelly, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself fully?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk because I'm pretty passionate about mental health, and even in the best of times, and right now it's not the best of times, so I'd love to talk about that. And to give a little background on me, I've been a school counselor for about 10 years. I've got my master's in school counseling from U of A, and then I also had my LAC, which was Licensed Associate Counselor, and I was working for a behavioral health agency for several years and as a therapist. And now I'm in a school counselor role, which typically has a couple of different parts. There's always the academic side, helping kids on their career and college path, choosing courses in high school. And then there's a social emotional piece, working through whatever social issues come up at home or at school, trying to always get kids back into the classroom. And obviously things have changed a little bit right now because we are not concerned about getting kids back in the classroom. We're just concerned with their overall mental health in general, and parents and teachers as well. So that's what I'm excited to talk to you guys about a little bit today.
Right. So today's episode is really going to be about what's it like for our students and for our parents and for our teachers on the other end of the computer? How can we best support them? And this is obviously inspiration education for all of our colleagues out there, how to do best practices in teaching. But in this crazy time right now that we're living in, sometimes your best practice is to be emotionally and spiritually there and mentally there for yourself, for your yourself as a parent or as a teacher, and also for your students. And so we thought, who better could we bring on to help us through that with best practices than Mrs. Weber. The inspiration for this vlog came to Chan and I when we were looking over the link that you sent to all of us high school teachers in a video chat that we did last week. And I forget the name of that post, that website post.
I think it's please do a bad job of putting your class online.
That's what it was.
I think that's what it's called, yeah.
Yeah, and I went through and I read it all, and I as a disclaimer, I'm not saying I agree with everything that this particular person posts on their website in its entirety, but this particular post I thought was very inspirational and helpful for me. It kind of took the weight off of me as a teacher and also as a parent during this time. And so I thought we could sort of structure the takeaways from that into our conversation here to help people through that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What I really liked about that particular article is she was talking about nobody signed up for this. None of us who are currently experiencing this unprecedented circumstance signed up for it. I'm sorry, speaking of unprecedented, I've got my child. You need to take them off and change them, honey. If you need help, I can help you. My 4-year-old's pants hurt. Unless you are a teacher who has signed up to be an online teacher, the rest of us never did. And we might have varying levels of familiarity with the technology, varying bandwidth at our houses, and neither did our students. And so we all just have to have a lot more grace for ourselves and our students. And as teachers, we always want to hold our students to a standard. We're always about like what's equitable, what is just, what is best practice. And in some ways, we have to let some of that go a little bit. Give ourselves and our students just a lot more grace right now.
Absolutely.
And give ourselves more grace in that too, because trying to navigate that and figuring out, I'm a high achieving teacher or whatever. I have to be completely innovative in everything I do, and then all that ends up doing is just piling a lot of stuff on them and on me.
Right. There are so many amazing resources out there. I mean, I have gotten so many emails and so many messages about all these awesome resources, and they are awesome, but it becomes overwhelming. I think our students can feel the same way too.
She also said that the students are probably less tech savvy than we actually realize. We think,
so true.
As 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds in the teaching profession, that our kids are going to know way more about technology than we do. But when it comes to things like this, they don't necessarily know as much as we realize. And so we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, we had a senior in high school who said he doesn't know how to use Google Classroom. And so, figuring out, okay, we thought you've been using Google Classroom for the last 4 years.
Right.
So let's talk you through it. Let's do a screenshot. Let's do a Loom video. And teachers have been amazingly flexible and really very nimble in figuring out how to do this.
Maybe not in every single episode that we've had in this vlog, but probably almost. And we've preached self-care quite a bit.
Yeah.
Being okay with the messy, making sure to take care of yourself, making sure to create margin. Anything really practical that we can give to our teachers today about self-care, because we know that there is a direct relationship. Research shows it's a direct relationship between how the teacher is doing, feeling, behaving socio-emotionally, that has a direct impact on the learning.
We know that we are models as teachers and as parents. We are models for our students and our children, and we have to remain calm in the face of this, and that is very difficult. I know that for myself, I'm a worrier by nature. I have a lot of anxiety, and so that comes through to my children and in my teaching. And so figuring out, how can I calm myself? How can I be a calming presence to my students and to my own children? And I think there are a lot of different ways to do that. And I think online, we've all seen a bunch of different self-care things, like, make sure you're moving your body, make sure you're exercising, get out in the sunshine. I love all of those. It adds more pressure. It feels like it's one more checklist, one more to-do list. And, I didn't read to my child 30 minutes today. And I didn't get out in the sunshine. And I didn't exercise. I didn't eat a healthy meal. There's just one more thing to put on myself. And so it's the self-care thing we have to be careful with, that we don't turn into just one more to-do list that we can hurt.
Right.
Feel bad that we didn't accomplish that goal.
Yeah, really, really well said.
I do. I find myself thinking, I didn't make a salad for my kids for the last 4 days, or if I'm being honest, probably longer. And so you're right. It is something. It's an added pressure that I have put on myself.
Well, and what I want us to realize is we're not all experiencing this quarantine the same way.
Right.
Some people are talking about being lonely and being bored and not having enough to do. And I'm thinking, I have more to do than ever, right? A lot of us are trying to work from home and raise our children and do household things and homeschool, things we never, ever signed up for. So if you're feeling actually more stressed, that's normal too. We're just not all experiencing this in the same way.
Hey, Kel, I've been wondering about the added stress on teachers regarding having to, I don't know a better word for it than to shepherd or pastor, other families. I have learned more about the families, the kids, and the families of the kids I teach than I might have being in the traditional classroom. So just maybe some words of wisdom on how to handle that. I do feel a little bit of pressure that I have to, as I become aware of how kids are and how families are and how dynamics are, and like, wow, that feels like a lot. So any thoughts on how to handle that?
Yeah, and that's interesting that you mentioned that, because counselors, we're trained how to kind of handle some of that. Doctors, same thing. If they're they're watching these traumatic situations over and over again. We've kind of have techniques to distance ourselves, and teachers aren't prepared for that. And so again, we're asked to put on another role. I would say having some really firm boundaries would be really helpful. So I am going to turn off my computer. I am going to turn off my phone at certain times. It's really nice if you can have breaks. So if you're doing some work in the morning and then later in the day and in the middle, you're doing something different, even if it's...
Like no looking at email after 4 p.m.
Exactly, because that burden, it can become too much. And if we are constantly giving and not receiving, then we get burned out and we have nothing left to give. So it's very important that we take care of ourselves, change I call it like changing our emotional environment. So if it's just go outside, go in a different room, whatever we need to do to kind of change the energy a little bit, rather than sitting in front of the laptop all day, is really helpful for our families.
Yeah, I have found that. Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I have found that just going outside and watering the plants, or going for a hike, or taking the dogs for a walk, is really, really helpful for my state of mind.
Yes,
and pulling weeds.
Oh my goodness, I've been doing so much weeding.
My plants have never looked better. I've been watering them like I'm supposed to be.
The silver linings, right?
So I have a question for you, Kelly. So it's easy, I think, for me as a teacher to not realize what's going on behind the scenes for my students. And I think we as teachers do the best that we can in a normal, traditional classroom setting where we get to see them and we get to hug them and we can read their faces and we can have these one-on-one conversations before and after the bell and at lunch and whatever. But online, I don't get that. So I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm wondering if you can shed some light for us teachers out there about what might be going on with the different variety of students out there, and what are they dealing with, so that we're aware of that when we're emailing and we're asking all of these things of them.
Right, good.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think students often like that they have that sort of distance with their teachers, because teachers are a safe place and they maybe don't have to share everything with them, and they just know my teachers love me and accept me just the way I am. But again, things are exaggerated right now. I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is with the uncertainty, that is really causing a lot of havoc. We are so used to things being predictable. I know where I'm going to be every day. I have a predictable routine and structure, and that's totally taken away, and we don't know for how long. So the things we've always taken for granted are gone. And that's difficult for adults, and it's very difficult for children. So with our littler kids, they might be experiencing anxiety, and it manifests in a different way. So they might regress. You might see some behaviors you haven't seen for a while, like bedwetting. You might see increased irritability, tantruming, anger. Kids need to feel some kind of structure and stimulation and feel safe. And they're not necessarily getting that, especially from peers. They're not getting that normal social interaction.
Right.
So what kids need is they need age-appropriate explanations. So what's going on in the world? Why can't you see grandma? Why aren't you in school? In a way that they can understand, and to talk about how they are safe. And with our older students, what we might see is a lot of grief and loss. Our students are missing milestone moments. Some of them are missing graduation, prom, the things that they've always counted on. You think of a student who's been in school 13 years, and now all of a sudden that ultimate moment is taken away, that celebration of their accomplishment, any kind of awards, all of that is gone right now. All the traditional milestones they were expecting.
Sports is it probably
absolutely, yeah.
Graduation.
championships, senior night, all of those things are just taken away, and there's no answer of when it's going to, if they can be recaptured. And then think about our kids are so social, and they're missing out on all of those little interactions, seeing the boy you like by the lockers, or sitting next to your best friend during history and whispering to each other, or, all of those fun things they're missing out on. And so we might see grief and loss for kids. We also might see relief, which is sort of, you don't always expect that, but they might be excited because some of their school commitments are gone. Things that they've been worried about or dreading for a long time are all of a sudden just, whoosh, gone off the table. And so, we see that. We're probably going to see a lot of issues with control and choice, because control and choice are taken away from us in such a major way. As parents and as teachers, how can we give some control and choice back to our students? And especially for teachers who tend to be pretty prescriptive and pretty rigid, to really try to give some sense of control and choice back to our students. And I'm not saying totally get rid of structure, because structure is good, but also when it feels like everything around us has been taken away and everything is out of our control, what control and choice can I have back? And I love giving students options, even in parenting. What are the things that I can give my child control over? And I, of course, get to make the decision about what the choices are. I make the categories, but then let her choose. Let our students have the same thing. I think that's really key.
Yeah, in that blog post, it said that, sometimes the safest place for students is at the school. And so, sometimes I wonder if there are students out there that are in a much worse position than they have ever been. It could be, with this increase in anxiety, there could be an increase in domestic violence, depression, maybe an increase in if they have had an existing eating disorder, or maybe they develop it. How can we, as teachers, without putting added pressure on ourselves to do this, that, or the other, is it maybe just recognizing that could be going on at home and being, I don't know, softer on due dates, or I don't know, suggestions on that?
Yeah, I mean, for sort of typical people who don't have underlying mental health issues, this is hard, but this situation is going to exacerbate the conditions that were already there. So if you have a student who is already in a somewhat dysfunctional home, it's going to get worse. If you have a student who had some depression and anxiety ahead of time, most likely it's going to get worse. And so I think most of us as teachers do have some kids kind of on our radar as the ones we're kind of concerned about. And those would be the ones where, how can we reach out to them in a different way? I've been sending a lot of hey, just checking in emails, and again, as a counselor, I have the freedom and the more time than a teacher does. But if there are a few students who are kind of on your radar, hey, I've got an inkling that there's some things going on with this student already, maybe just reaching out. Are you available for a chat? Are you available for a Zoom call? Are you available just to send a quick note of encouragement? Because things are probably going to get worse for those kids while they're home.
As far as you're aware, do most schools have such social emotional health plans? Meaning, teachers must have resources. They have, their special ed group is a resource. Their counselors are a resource. Are you aware that maybe there must be an emergency action plan, if you will, that teachers can go to, that schools have set up? Are you aware of what those maybe look like?
Yeah, in fact, I was reading some articles this morning about how a lot of school counselors are going online. They're creating Google Classrooms and other ways to interact with their students. Unfortunately, most school counselors are really overwhelmed. So you might have one counselor to 1,000 students, but they're doing their very best. Every single state is going to have crisis set up. So in Arizona, we've got crisis response centers. So if there are any suicidal thoughts, threats of harm, anything like that, there's warm lines, so that kids and parents can have a place to talk, and if there are emergency services needed, a place to go for that. Now, obviously, if there's ever any the situation is so bad right now, 911 is always the best place to go. But I would recommend looking for what are the crisis response centers, lines, warm lines, suicide lines. Those are all easily accessible, and teachers can provide those to students, and to parents as resources as well. And the hard thing is people who already had supports, those might be gone. Like they might already have a therapist, and they might not be able to see that therapist anymore. They might not have the same access to their medications. They might not have the same access to the social support that they had previously. So I am very concerned about those people who have underlying conditions. And I've had people ask to me, what can I do if I've got a friend that I'm worried about? And I would encourage them to keep reaching out. When people are depressed, they tend to self-isolate, and now it's just even easier to self-isolate. So if you have a person in your life that you are concerned about, what I really recommend is reach out and send a text, send an email, a phone call, and if they don't respond, that's okay. Keep doing it. Don't worry about being annoying. You can even do something like, hey, I am going to call you every Monday at 4 o'clock, and if you don't want to talk to me, that's okay, but I'm going to keep calling. Sometimes people just tend to isolate and not reach out when really that's what they want and need. So take that away from them and reach out. Whatever you can do to kind of get your mind out of it. We're looking for ways to distract, and some of them are healthier than others. So it's likely that we're going to see an increase in substance use. There's likelihood that we're going to see uptick in risky behaviors and recklessness. So what can we put in its place? What are some positive, pro-social, healthy behaviors that we can put in its place?
One of the another piece of advice that she had given on that blog was to not do synchronous lectures or assignments of any kind, and even to maybe even go the way of getting rid of video lectures, or reducing them in size and length and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think what she was trying to get at is when you are prepared for an online classroom environment, you have the technology, the resources, the time, the internet bandwidth. You have prepared yourself for that kind of learning environment and teaching environment. And so best practices in an online class is not the same now as it was before. Right. So if we are thrown into this situation, I think we have to be super, super flexible. Our students don't necessarily have the technology. They don't necessarily have the internet bandwidth. They don't necessarily have the free time and space. In social distancing, that means everybody's in the house together. And so some of our students may be babysitting for their younger siblings. Some of our teachers are taking care of their children. And so I think if you can do live video, I think you absolutely have to be able to provide it as a something they can look at later.
Record it. A lot of these things let you record. Exactly. It's super easy.
Yeah, because if I'm a parent and I'm working from home and a child says, no, I need to watch a video for my chemistry class, I'm going to say, no, my work has to take priority because I have to make money to pay for our rent. And so these are unprecedented situations, and we don't want our students to have to make those kind of difficult choices, nor the parents.
I mean, that's even something that I have experienced this week, where the younger students, my girls are younger, they're in middle school, and they've never made an appointment, for example. They don't know what that means, that making that appointment and using a video chat doesn't mean you could just use the computer you were using, because that computer doesn't have the camera capabilities and that kind of thing. So
Right.
this is a whole new world for them, almost, where they're learning adult things, but the learning curve is very, very steep. And so
right, they don't have the same problem-solving skills that we do. Low frustration tolerance. Try homeschooling a preschooler. So along the lines with videos, I've experienced this with my own daughter. So I have a 4-year-old in preschool, and her school is using a platform called Class Dojo. And the first time she watched a video of her teacher reading a story and singing their good morning song that includes all of their names of the kids in the class, my daughter's face just lit up, and I started crying. So I think that our students really like to see us. And so for my class, I've been recording 1 and 2 minute videos, really short, just saying hello, maybe explaining the assignments a little bit, doing a check-in, and putting it on my Google Classroom. And I've been using the Google extension Screencastify for that, and that's been working really well for me. So if I think that's a great usage of video to help us continue to feel connected.
Awesome. What do you think about tests, Kelly? Online tests, different versions of tests. How might we, as teachers, be able to do that better for our students now that we're all online right now? Any thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I want to hear your answer to this one.
I wouldn't do any testing right now. How can we assess without doing a test is what I would say. It's just creating stress for us. It's creating opportunities for our students to cheat. I wouldn't do it unless it is absolutely mandatory. And I've heard teachers come up with lots of wonderful ways around it. But for me, if I could avoid any tests, I would.
Avoiding plagiarism and cheating, or avoiding tests in general?
I would avoid giving a test.
I'm saying, you said that you've heard of lots of different ways that teachers have developed strategies, and I just wanted to clarify.
Right. Oh yes, I've heard of a lot of different strategies that teachers can use in order to avoid some of the plagiarism. And plagiarism is almost a different beast. I mean, we're used to. Hello, this is my daughter. We're used to having to search for plagiarism for papers and things like that. I had a teacher yesterday tell me she was so excited. She's been using Google Classroom for years, and she just discovered originality reports. And so she's been able to look at her students' research papers using that resource, and she was super excited. But I think with testing, it just opens up Pandora's box. And I don't know that we have time or resources to research all the best ways to handle giving and assessing a test that is fair, equitable, and doesn't just give our students ample opportunity to cheat, which is not really fair to them either, because we're putting them in a situation where they really have to make the wise choice, and some of them don't have the self-control for that.
And if I can pose as well that our assessments then not turn to just a bunch of big writing assignments, or even chunked writing assignments. So like my daughter, for example, she's in college. And of course, there's a higher expectation for that, but her learning style is very personal, discussion-based. And, a professor took, their routine was come into class, take maybe a 10-minute quiz. He turned that into, for her, a 3-hour writing assignment that was just sending her over the edge. And so we have to be really aware that all our kids learn differently. So if our kids, they don't perform well, if you will, through just straight on writing, man, you're taking something that sounds simple. Oh, this should only take 15 minutes, to something that's arduous and toil. And we've got to be really careful that we find alternate ways of assessing what our kids know.
So what I'm hearing you say is basically teachers should really just be cutting out tests right now, because this is just not the time nor the learning environment to be able to do that well. And for me as a history teacher, that is pretty easy for me. I can still be encouraging them to be learning and doing smaller chunked assignments and that kind of thing. But what about for a math teacher?
Well, and hopefully some of our math teachers are utilizing the resources of their textbook creators. I know a lot of times there are tests available online through the textbooks. I know that Quizlet is an option for some students and teachers. Having students take a picture of their work and upload that along with the test. Asking a parent to proctor a test and sign that they observed their student. Things like that I think are workarounds if necessary.
Another question I had was, how can we get tools in the kids' hands for mental health?
Yeah, there are some cool apps like Headspace and Calm where it encourages you to take a moment and just, like it says, be calm. I've thought about doing maybe some, 1 or 2 minute videos on different social media sites or different Google Classrooms where it's, hey, here's a quick tip for today. How can you encourage yourself? The 2 things that I would really point people to besides the whole self-care and structure and discipline and, all of that we've all been hearing, the 2 pieces that I would really point to would be resilience and looking at your thoughts. So with resilience, we know they've done a lot of research on it, is that you can develop resilience and it can turn difficult situations into even positives later. So how can we encourage resilience? Well, it's helping students and people learn about control, competence, coping, confidence, connection, character, and contribution. And I'm taking that from a website that we can link, the C's of resilience. But we want to build a resilient community, and there are some things that we can do to build resilience. The other thing that I would encourage people to do is to be looking at their thoughts. And this is something that when you're in therapy, your therapist does with you. And obviously it's better to do with a professional. But if you're at your own house, notice your thoughts. So if you notice that you're feeling down or really negative, where are my thoughts going? Am I going into the always and never realm? We're starting to kind of go on down that anxiety spiral. And we call it reframing. So is there a way to reframe my thoughts? So instead of thinking everything is horrible and terrible and it is never going to get better, I am always going to feel this way. Nobody cares about me. I'm all alone. What's the purpose? I'm trying to do some reframing, like this is a really difficult situation for everyone, but it will end at some point. There are lots of people who love me. There is a purpose to my life. I can be doing things that are going to help me in the future. So just taking the time to examine our own thoughts and realizing I'm in a very negative space right now. And that doesn't mean we have to replace it with positivity. I talk about it as replacing it with truth. So what is the truth? Well, the truth is that it's not going to be like this forever. There is going to be an end. This too shall pass. And the world is going to look different afterwards. And so what are some ways that I can contribute to the world when we come back? And I am going to be reunited with my friends. Just like a woman at the end of her pregnancy is like, I'm going to feel like this forever. No, this too shall pass, and you will you will feel better, and you will have your body back, and it's going to be a different body, but it's not going to be the same as the pain of child carrying a child or children in some people's cases.
Wise words.
The last thing, I did have one more thing I wanted to say. There is enormous pressure to be productive right now. While you're home, learn a new language.
Especially teachers.
Yeah. bake the perfect sourdough bread. And if those things help you feel better and give you that control back and are relaxing, then by all means go for it. But if you're feeling sad and you're feeling grief, it is okay to grieve. Just like when a loved one dies, we need a period of mourning, and we need a period of mourning right now for what's going on. We have all lost a lot, and some people will lose even more than others. And so it is okay to feel sad, and I just want to sit with my sadness for a while. We don't necessarily have to be hyper productive.
I am so grateful that you've taken the time to be able to share some of these words of wisdom from a counselor's perspective, because like we started this episode today, you know, we've moved to online, and I feel like, you know, the first week we were, okay, we can do this, we're going to take it slow and everything's going to be fine. And then in this week that we're in right now, it was like
reality.
The honeymoon period is over.
Yeah. And I, if it's happening for me, it has to be happening for other parents, teachers, and students out there. Well, what is the mental health state of us all, and how can we be better prepared in the coming weeks, and what could we do to alleviate that as teachers and as parents and that kind of thing?
We have to take care of each other. We have to reach out to one another. I love what, you know, I'm seeing with, you know, the drive-by parades that people are doing for celebrating different events. I love the chalk on the sidewalks. My daughter and I made a sign for the mailman thanking him. I try to watch some inspirational videos on YouTube. Anything that can remind us that we are all in this together.
Think of other.
Yeah, we were created for fellowship and community, and right now we have isolation and loneliness. So to remind ourselves that we're all in this together, I think does help a lot.
Well, I feel encouraged just like dialoguing about these things and thinking about these things, and like you said, turning your thought process to truth. So even today of just dialoguing this, it's just a very strong reminder about truth. And
the opposite of fear, I think, is honesty and truth and love. So we still have to be honest about what we're going through and encourage our students and our families to be honest. And if we don't talk about something, especially children, they insert some kind of explanation that is often incorrect. Our students are exposed to all kinds of misinformation on social media. So if they don't hear it from trusted adults like parents and teachers, they're going to fill in an explanation themselves. So we really have to be that person in the lives of those we've been chosen to shepherd.
Well, as we close, my big takeaways from today would be to not expect perfection, to do self-help or self-care, but that don't make that a requirement. Don't add that as another thing on your to-do list. To cut out tests if at all possible. To be flexible. Chan, what are some other things?
For me, would be to be very self-aware of my thoughts. So I can do that for my daughter, if you will, but to do that for me is more difficult. So yeah, being aware of that for myself, and then of course remembering that that's the same thing my kids are going through.
Yeah, I mean, and also another thing would be that students know less about technology than we realize, and so being aware of that and not requiring like synchronous work and that kind of thing, I think is important for us to remember as teachers. And also that being in this social distancing and isolation could exacerbate existing conditions and or bring up new conditions within people, and so being aware of that and not overwhelming our students and ourselves is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to be so gracious to one another, and especially to ourselves right now.
Okay.
Well, I can't wait to get this episode out there, and I think we need to push this on as much as we can. I think a ton of people need to hear these things. And, gosh, Kelly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's good to see your faces.
Well, but you're not just wise, but make it so relatable. So thank you for bringing clarity and wisdom to this whole thing.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. See you next week.
Bye.
Oh no, we're on Easter break next week, so not next week. We're taking a break. Like, we need it and everybody needs it, but we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Woohoo! Until next time.